Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Scooter with Scooter's Brass here with another interesting, I hope, episode of Shooting the Brass with Scooter. It's been a nice week. I don't know any of you that are here in Arizona, but we've had a lot of rain over the past couple of weeks. I think we haven't had as much rain as we've had this summer since 2015. So we're doing really well weather-wise, which is great because my backyard is green grass and it's really, really green this time of the year. So that's pretty cool. Welcome to Shooting the Brass with Scooter. I'm your host, Shooting the Brass, and Scooter's Brass is sponsored by AJI Sporting Goods. They are here in the East Valley in Arizona, just on Apache Trail west of Signal Butte on the north side of the street. For those of you that want to come down and get a good deal, find a good firearm, good ammo, good accessories, that's the place to go. Go down, tell them Scooter sent you. They'll be nicer than nice probably, but they're nice people. It's a family-owned local business, and Lord knows I support those guys. So today I wanted to give everyone an intro to competitive shooting. This next month marks my third anniversary for shooting multi-gun competitions. So it's kind of a milestone. I'm thinking about going through and looking at basically making a video with my first 3-gun match versus my last 3-gun match, so you can see the difference in my response time, capabilities, everything like that, to see just how much I've improved over the past 3 years, because I know I have. Most people do, when you do things repetitively over and over again, you do tend to get a little bit better at it. So that's one of those things I wanted to do. But for those of you out there, I'm a real big fan of trying to get people involved and get people, help people get started in the world of competitive shooting. Now, a lot of it will have to do with your locale. Some places you got matches all over the place at different ranges. Some places you may not have so many, so it's kind of hard and not easy to normally figure out where your matches are. You can start by contacting your local gun clubs. Here in Arizona, down in the Phoenix area, we've got of course, Rio Salado, where I'm a member, and it's right up the hill from us, and that's where I do most of my competitions. We also have the Phoenix Rod and Gun Club, which is in South Phoenix, over by South Mountain. They do matches and sponsored matches and stuff like that there. We have Cowtown Range, Arizona, which is in the northwest of Phoenix, up close to or just south of Lake Pleasant. Also have the Ben Avery Range up north, just off the 17 freeway. They do a lot of matches and stuff up there as well. As for some of the local gun ranges, I don't know if the local gun ranges actually do competitions. They may not. I don't know. But it's always worthwhile to check in. Now, one of the best resources, because most shooting clubs and events and stuff like that use what's called Practice Score. So if you can create a free account on Practice Score, and then you can actually search in your area for matches near you. And that would be the first step, is to see what matches you have available in your area. Now, here where I'm at, here in East Mesa, and I'm in Apache Junction, but, east of Mesa, I should say, we're real lucky because Rio Salado has a lot of different types of matches. You've got your black rifle. The Rio Multi-Gun Group does several different matches every month. So they'll do the black rifle match, which is the first Saturday of every month. The Rio Multi-Gun, which is either 2-gun or 3-gun, and that is the second Saturday of every month. Then you've got the PCC Tactical Shotgun match, although they don't shoot Tactical Shotgun anymore. I think it's because it's summer, but I'm not sure. But that is the third Thursday of every month. And then you've got Tuesday Night Steel. You got some USPCA events, I think. There's a lot of different matches. And then you've got your big annual matches, like March is Superstition Mountain Mystery 3-gun. And then The next big match would be September, the last weekend of September usually, and that is the Arizona State PCC Championships. The week after that is the Red October Cold War event, and this is all out at Rio Salado. Now, I know that Cowtown, I believe, does a multi-gun once a month as well. It's not the same weekend as the Rio Salado because they communicate real well between each other, so they don't have matches on the same weekend. Because a lot of people that shoot at Rio Salado also shoot at Cowtown and vice versa. So that's the first thing to do is to find out what matches are in your area. Once you do that, and you find out the matches in your area and figure out what type of match you like. My favorite's 3-gun. I like, using pistol, shotgun, rifle. Occasionally I'll shoot black rifle, but not often because it's just rifle and it's not as fun for me. I'm sure others find it very, very fun, but it's not that fun for me. And then I don't normally shoot the PCC matches just because I'm not a real big PCC guy, but I enjoy the PCC state championship. So I do have a PCC, and I usually will shoot the PCC monthly match the same, a week or two before the state match, so I can make sure my zero is good, my magazines are all flowing right, that kind of thing. So it's one of those things that, you got to work at. And once you figure out what type of competition you want to be in, that's when you start looking at what you need base minimums to be able to participate. Now, they have divisions. Okay. For example, the Rio Salado multi-gun, the Superstition Mountain multi-gun, those kind of things, they have actual equipment divisions that you can be in. Let me see if I can find those so that I can read those out to you. I shoot in the open division, mostly because I'm blind as a bat and because I've got red dots and scopes on all my firearms. So I've got a red dot on my handgun. I've got a red dot on my shotgun. I've got a red dot and a scope on my rifle. The red dot's on a 45, and it's for short range, and then the scope, of course, is for long range. Let me think. So once you figure out what you want to do, then you figure out what types of stuff you need. Now, there's a whole lot of manufacturers and distributors and stores and stuff online where you can buy your stuff. My first recommendation would be to check your local stores. Check your local gun stores. They may actually have depending on where you're at, may have a real good. I got the yawns today. I was up mowing the grass this morning, really, really early. So your local places, you can get your firearms pretty much from your local things. I got all of my firearms that I use in matches from AJI Sporting Goods. Okay, so I have a Diamondback M4E1 308 AR-10, which I purchased through AJI because most gun stores can actually order whatever gun you want. So you can order it online if you want to, but it still has to get shipped to an FFL anyway. So I just go to my FFL and have them order it, and that way it comes straight to them. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot easier, and and then I just fill out the paperwork when it comes in. So for Black Rifle or IDARM, which is the annual Independence Day action rifle match, I always use my 308 because you would assume since it's a rifle match, you're going to have distance targets, and the 308 just has better punch and less drop over distance out to 500 or 600 yards than a 223 AR-15 platform. Now I've got Aero Precision. No, that's actually the M4E1 is the Aero Precision. The Diamondbacks is a DB10 is what it's called. So my Aero Precision is the M4E1. It's a 9mm. It's got a red dot and a scope just like my 308 does. And I use that for multi-gun matches because you've got both close and long range, and you're also shooting a lot more ammo. When I'm doing IDARM, I only have to hit the targets once because I'm shooting heavy. So that's another thing to consider, okay? Think of what your ammo is going to cost for your competitions, especially these days when we got, a hard time with ammo, right? We got these shortages and stuff of ammo that kind of is a pain in the butt. So think about what kind of matches you're going to do, and then try out. A lot of places will let you rent firearms. I don't know if they'll let you rent rifles, but I know a lot of places, Caswell's and Mesa, Shooter's World, a lot of those places will actually let you rent different types of firearms. And that way you can figure out what exactly fits your hand and fits your style and fits your abilities. There's a lot of, professionals out there that'll tell you, oh, you have to shoot this, or, oh, you have to shoot that. I'm not going to tell you that, because I kind of think that what you feel comfortable with and what you shoot with best is what you should shoot. Okay, regardless of manufacturer, make, model, whatever. For example, I don't use a Glock. I've got a Glock 17. It's my son's, or I bought it for my son, but he lives in California and he still has not told me where to ship it. So I've still got it in my safe. So all intents and purposes, it's mine. I don't use it. I don't like the way the Glock feels in my hand. So for competition shooting, I started out with a Smith & Wesson MP9, the original version, not the 2.0 versions. I put a green dot on top of it because I couldn't find a red dot for the right plate. Don't ask me why. But yeah, so I've got a green dot on it, and it worked fine. It's got each of the magazines is 17 round capacities, which is another thing that you need to look at whenever you're deciding on what firearms you have. If you're going to shoot heavy metal division, which requires you to use something like 40 caliber or 45 caliber handguns, you're probably going to want to look for something that's a double stack and not a single stack. My 1911, I probably would not use that in a competition because it's only 7 round capacity. I'd have to go through, 5 magazines just to get through a stage. It's not very efficient, right? You lose a lot of time switching out magazines and stuff. Let's see. So practice score is a good idea to go to find places. Let's see our rules. Okay. So you always want to worry about those kind of things. Capacity of your firearm, how much you can hold at one time, but you also have to match that up with your division. For example, if you're shooting heavy metal, you can't start out, I don't think, with 30 round magazines in your 308. You have to use 20s. It's the same thing for stealth. I think that you're limited. There's a lot of different things that you're limited to, depending on what division you're in. And I'm trying to get that up so I can read it to you. Let's see. And my camera's turning off. I don't know why it keeps turning off. It's just pissing me off is what it's doing. I mean, it's got a new battery in there and everything. And, it's working, but it's not working. Well, let me see if I can get it turned back on. Yeah, it's just started doing this recently, and I don't know why. Because normally it doesn't turn itself off in the middle of a show. So anyway, at least you can still hear me. My microphone still works, so that's a good thing, right? Let's see. Safety, ammunition. You also have to be concerned about your ammunition because some ranges will not let you use bimetal ammo or steel cased ammo or anything like that, depending on where you're at. So yeah, there's a lot of things here. So the equipment divisions for multi-gun here at Rio Salado, and I think the same for Cowtown and some of the other places, is you have open, stealth, tactical, limited, and heavy metal. Now, they all have their own requirements. If you're an open, anything goes. It doesn't really matter what you're using because it's open category. So you can pretty much, the only limitation, like for handgun, shoulder holsters and cross draw holsters are prohibited because those break the 180 when you have it underneath your arm and you're facing forward. Your firearm's face broken the 180 right off the top. And the same with cross draws. The only shotgun problem with open is that if you use tubular speed loading devices, they must feature a primer relief cut so that you're not punching into the primer when you're putting it into the shotgun. Stealth division, I think I shot stealth. Originally, that's what I was shooting was stealth, but I switched out of stealth because I'm blind as a bat and I had to start adding optics to my guns. Then you got tactical division. I would say to go to www.riomultigun.com and look at their rule book because it'll at least give you the basic idea of what types of things that you can and can't use, etc. So that's riomultigun.com. Okay, that's where I get all my rules and definitions and all that other stuff. So once you figure out what division you're going to run in, then you can actually start looking at your firearms and cater your firearms to the division that you're going to participate in. Like I said, I'm running a Canik TPX TP9 SFX. It's got a mag well that I installed and a Vortex Venom red dot. So I got that through AJI. They had it in the shelf, and it looked like it was a really nice gun. So I got that, and I've been using it ever since. Now, when you're talking about your handguns or your rifles or anything like that, you also have to talk about accessories. For example, you see a lot of competitive shooters. They have different types of belts, holsters, mag holders, etc. I run a specific, I think I got it from Rocky Mountain Concealment, that specifically made a Canik competition holster. So I use that for my holster. Let me actually get that so I can show you, because I can actually show you that. It's not against the rules to show you accessories. It's just against the rules to show you a firearm. So this is my basic load belt for multi-gun. All right. So this is the specific holster. It's got a tension knob here, which is good because you want your gun to be able to come out of your holster easily, but you don't want it to pop out when you're moving, running, sliding, getting on the ground, or anything like that, because that gets you a disqualification. And this was from Rocky Mountain Concealment. You can see that it's got a drop down here, so the gun hangs a little bit lower. I believe that there are some actual rules in the rules about specific types of holsters and how they can and can't be attached, and they have to be attached to the waist. They can't be leg drop holsters, that kind of thing. So look at your division that you want to run in, and then that's what you need to pick from. Then here is this is a AR-15 double stack. So I have 2 magazines that I have on my belt when I'm shooting rifle. Because a lot of times I'll be shooting rifle pistol or rifle shotgun or pistol shotgun or all 3. You just never know until you actually get your stage maps or your stage designs, and you can figure that out. Then I've got these things right here. These are my double stack mag holders. So I can carry basically 4 handgun magazines plus 1 in the gun. I can take 2 AR-15 magazines. 30 rounds is what I always use, unless it's a lot. If it's a rifle-only stage that has 50 or 60 rounds, I'll use a drum, 50-round drum from KCI. Otherwise, I'll just use the magazines. And then, of course, my holster. Now, my shotgun is a VR-80 semi-automatic. It's an AR platform. The magazines I have, I put clips on that hang to the belt so that I can carry them hanging off the belt. 2 back here, and then 1 up here in the front, and then, of course, 1 in there. I usually use the 12-round magazines, or it's actually a 9-round magazine with a +3 mag butt from Taylor Freelance, who makes VR-80 mag butts, the end caps, and it extends your magazine by 3. So my 9-round magazines are 12. And if you get the 19-round magazines, it only gives you +1, so there's not really that much of a gain there. I do have a 20-round drum that I use for my shotgun, but that's only if I know that I'm going to need 20 rounds or less, because it's not the easiest thing to drop that magazine out, that drum out, and then put a new magazine in. It gets kind of sticky. So once you figure that out, a lot of people use tube loaders. Where you basically take a tube and you ram your shells up into the shotgun. I used to have one of those before I went with the VR-80. It was a lot easier because if you're like me and you're starting out brand new, you may not be able to load the magazines like you see the professionals doing, where they have four shells in their hand and they're just sliding them in. You see it in John Wick also. I never got the hang of that. So I went straight to using a mag fed, which is perfectly legal in the open division. My first rifle that I used was a Smith & Wesson MP15 Sport 2. I modified it. I put on a better buttstock, and I changed the grip out for a Luth AR chubby grip, which is what we have on pretty much any AR-based rifle we have in the house, whether it's a shotgun or a rifle itself. we put a chubby grip on it because they're real comfortable, really easy to put on. I love the feel of it. The only downside is if you're left-handed, they don't make a left-handed version, so you have to keep that in mind. So the accessories are very important, depending on what you shoot. A decent bipod is always recommended because there are going to be times where you're down in the dirt or you're on some sort of a flat surface that you're trying to shoot off of, and having a bipod on the front of your rifle is always a good idea. So one of the other things I had to modify on the MP15 Sport 2 was that it doesn't come with a free-floating handguard. It comes with a regular old plastic handguard that you can't attach anything to. So you have to think about that too. They do have two-piece floating handguards out there for the AR rifle type, which a friend of mine had an extra one laying around that he wasn't ever going to use again because it has the cutout, the front sight on the MP15. You got to be careful with that because if you take it off, then you got to replace the gas block and all this other stuff. So this two-piece floating handguard just slapped on top of that, and you can still see the sight out through the front. So you may have to do that. It'd be better if you actually just bought a new rifle that has a free floating handguard already built onto it. I also added a compensator to the front. I took the muzzle flash hider off and put a muzzle brake on it because when you're in competition, you don't care so much if you get muzzle flash. It actually, if you're taking pictures or somebody's taking pictures of you, that muzzle flash looks pretty cool. But you have to have a compensator really to get that vibrant muzzle flash. The compensator helps for preventing muzzle rise. So when you're shooting, your gun's not popping up like this. So all of the AR-15s, my AR-10, and my VR-80 shotgun all have compensators on it to help reduce muzzle lift. So that's another thing to think about. Some people, depending on what they do, you have different, depending on your shotgun. If you're using a tubular magazine shotgun, like your regular old Mossbergs or your Brunellis or any of those types, then you have to manually load those shells into the tube. So they have what's called shell carriers or shell caddies that basically you put your shells into. And I can show you one of those. My sponsor gave me a couple of these when I was in because nobody else buys these things usually at his store. So it's basically a plastic case or a caddy that clips to your belt, right? And I've got some dummy rounds in here. So here's your 12 gauge shotgun dummy round, and they just basically slide in to here. And this holds 6 shells. So you'll have 6 shells in here. I don't have enough dummy rounds in here to fully load it. Oh, there they are. So you'll put your 6 shells in here, and then as you're using them, you can pull them out 2 or 4 at a time or however you do it. I've seen people that do both, where they do both 2 fingers and 4 fingers. These are dummy rounds. I would recommend if you're starting out and you're going to practice is to get these. You can find them on Amazon. Some stores may have them. It's a dummy round that's designed that allows you to actually practice loading your firearm without the risk of setting a shell off. So dummy rounds, good thing. Okay, so make sure you get some of those. I have dummy rounds for 12 gauge, 20 gauge for my wife's 20 gauge shotgun, AR-15 rounds, 223 dummy rounds, 45 caliber, 45 ACP dummy rounds, and 9mm dummy rounds. All of these things are real easy to get. You can get them on Amazon or you can get them at different stores and stuff like that. And that will help you so that you can actually practice loading your firearms without risk of having a discharge. So this basically sits like this, and it sits on your belt. And then as you go to load, you just pull your rounds out and slide them into the shotgun. So that's one of the options you have depending on what type of division you're in and what type of shotgun you have. Most of the time, you can actually buy a shotgun and then modify it. For example, my first shotgun was a Mossberg 930 Tactical, which was a 7+1 firearm. So my maximum capability was 8 rounds before I had to reload. I got an extension, a tube extension, which you can add on to that with a longer tube spring, so that you can. I actually converted it over to 11+1 from a 7+1. And once you start competing, you'll understand just how critical it is. Because my first matches, I was losing 10 to 15 seconds per stage just trying to reload my shotgun halfway through. That's why I switched to the tube loaders, which then they worked better, but they were kind of cumbersome and problematic, and I had some trouble with it, and I bent my lifter in the middle of a match. So then I switched to the VR80, and I've been using that ever since. So that's one of the other things that you should do. You should always look at ways to practice with your firearms without being at the range. You can practice drawing with an empty gun at home. That helps you get used to where your gun is and how to draw it, how to holster it and stuff like that. It's where you speed up your actual, boom, you got it done, right? Now, it's a little harder to do that with like a rifle. Especially, if your neighbors are nosy and they're peeking over the wall and you got an AR-15 that you're back there practicing jumping mags and loading empty mags. And they get a little edgy about that. Another thing that you need to do is for safety purposes. Most ranges nowadays require what's called a chamber flag. It's a piece that goes into your chamber when it's empty so that you can see from a distance there's no round loaded. And I've got one of those. I think there's one over here for my wife's 20 gauge. Yeah. So this is a 20 gauge chamber flag. So when you pull the bolt open, you slide this in there and let the bolt close. This basically gets trapped, and you can see the flag hanging out. This one, of course, says Scooter's Brass. And since it's my wife's shotgun, it's a girl and a gun. Yeah, it's custom. You can get these online too. If you go to Amazon, my first set of chamber flags I have says "Remove before pew pew," and then they have actual plastic that you attach to the flag so that goes into your chamber. I can put those in my handguns, my shotgun, my rifles, everything I need to, because I keep extras in my toolbox on site all the time. So when you're thinking about gear, you literally need to think about the gear that's going to be best for you. I had trouble with the belt caddies because I'm a little round here, right about here. So I ended up getting a 24 round leg shotgun carrier that had 24 shotgun shells down between my hip and my thigh, or my knee, on my thigh side, so that I could actually grab them off of that and load them. I do not know why my camera is just being a crank today. It just wants to keep turning off. So I may have to actually think about using a different camera next time. I don't understand why it's doing that. Maybe it's something to do with how it's plugged in. I don't know. But anyway, so it's back. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do that you can get to customize your firearms and to customize your gear, which makes it more comfortable for you. And that's important, is your comfort. Because remember, you're the one that's competing, and you're kind of competing against yourself more than competing against others. So keep that in mind when you're looking at what types of belts you have. Most real competition shooting belts are Velcro. So they have an inside belt that you put inside your pants, and then you wrap your outside belt around that. That way you can actually have several different belts for the outside with one inner belt. And that way, if you're switching stages and one stage is pistol rifle, your next stage is shotgun rifle, you can take one belt off, which removes your holster, your handgun holster, and your handgun magazine holders, and put another belt on that has AR and shotgun mags on it, and you don't have to sit there and mess with it. It's pretty simple and easy to do. It's always nice also to think about for rifles. Occasionally, you will have to use a rifle sling for stages. Not often, but yes, sometimes you do. So it's always good to look and find. The one that I have is a quick adjust 2-point sling, right? So it basically attaches to the front and the back of the rifle, but it's got a tab that I can easily tighten it or loosen it without having to take it off and mess with it and stuff like that. I can do it on the run. So you shoot, and then you drop your rifle down, you tighten that up so it doesn't bounce around, and then you move, you can move on. So that would be another thing that it would be a good idea for you to look for is a decent sling type. Some people use single point slings. I'm not really a fan of those because if I'm trying to run, my rifle is between my legs and it's smacking me in the knees or in the crotch or wherever. So that's why I use a double or a 2-point, is that way I can actually shoot, and then I just toss my rifle over my shoulder with the butt sticking up behind my head, and then I take off. So it's good that way. But it's what you're comfortable with. If you feel more comfortable using a single point sling, by all means, do it. That's your choice. One thing that people don't really normally talk about, shoes. Okay. Depending on your terrain, depending on your props, depends on what type of shoes you really need to have. I've got some, I can't remember what they call them. It's not all terrain, but it's something like that. They're basically, you're supposed to be able to use them for whatever. So you can use them in football, soccer, baseball, running. They basically will work pretty much in whatever sport I think they're cross trainers maybe. Anyway, you need to find shoes that actually feel comfortable, that actually grip into whatever type of terrain and surfaces you're on. For example, last weekend, one of the stages had a ramp. You basically started out from inside a Huey helicopter. And if you watch the video, which is available on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, you'll see that where I was shooting from the inside of the Huey. To get out of the Huey, you have to go down a ramp. Now, it rained like hell the night before, so it was really wet. So you have to be considerate about what it's like going down a smooth ramp that may be wet, or that your shoes may be wet on, because you could easily fall with a loaded firearm in your hand and have an accidental discharge or break something or any of that kind of stuff. Shoes are very important. Always remember to get the best shoes for what your terrain is going to be, because that's really important. Clothing-wise, I'm not a fan of shooting in shorts. Some people do. I usually shoot in long pants, or I always shoot in long pants. Most of the time, they're cargo type, so they have pockets on the legs. That way I can dump an extra magazine in my thigh pockets, whatever I need, right? Gives me extra carrying space without taking up space on the belt. I always wear one of my shooting shirts. This is my Rio Salado shooting shirt. See, Scooter right here. You got the rattlesnake because we are in the desert. And you can see the Rio Salado and stuff on the back. They basically, every year, Rio Salado Multi-Gun will actually have a new shirt designed. So I've got 3 or 4 different shirts from different years. I've also got match shirts from most of the matches that I participate in, because usually you get a free T-shirt, or if it's one of the big matches, you can get a shirt like this specifically for the big matches. So I just recently got one this year for the Rio Salado Super Precision Mountain 3-gun, because it was made specifically for that match. So it's a collector's item. If you're like me, I normally don't wear a hat because I've always got a GoPro on my head. And wearing the GoPro on top of a hat with my headphone or my earmuffs over that, because I can't deal with the earplugs in my ears. I don't like things in my ears. It's very uncomfortable for me to have stuff inside my ears, so I wear muffs that are electronic, so they filter out loud noises but let me still hear what's going on. So I would recommend, as a choice, looking to see what type of hearing protection works for you. You can get earplugs, you can get the earmuffs, you can get regular shooting earmuffs. I got the electronic ones because I like to be able to hear regular speech and stuff like that, because I'm harder hearing anyway. Because if I put earplugs in my ears or I get the regular muffs, I can't hear anything. Zero. And you have to be able to hear, especially when you're on a stage, because if the range officer tells you to stop in the middle of a shoot, then you have to. And if you can't hear them and you don't stop, then most likely you're going to get disqualified. And you don't want to do that. It will happen. It's not a matter of if you'll get disqualified. Everybody gets disqualified at least once. In 3 years, I've been disqualified once, and that was a stupid mistake on my part. A lot of times, especially here in Arizona, it's always good to wear hats because we do got a lot of sun, especially during the summer. So hats are good. Wide brim hat, you can always take the hat off when you shoot your stage and then put it on afterwards to give you the sun, right? A lot of people wear shimas, I think is how they're pronounced. I've got one. I wear it occasionally. You can wet it down, wrap it around your head, and you kind of got your own evaporative cooler. Sometimes that works real well, sometimes not so much. It depends on the humidity, depends on the heat, how much sun you're in, etc. Now, one other thing that a lot of people don't normally look into or think about whenever they're first starting to compete is the gun buggy. Okay. I have a gun buggy that I've made using different types of parts that I got from here and there and everywhere. That gun bunny is a 3-wheel. It basically is a jogging stroller, a 3-wheel jogging stroller. They make really good gun buggies. I think I got it for like $75 off of Amazon. And then I got some ATC rifle mounts for either side. So I have one side that I can put my shotgun on and one side I can put my rifle on. And that way I'm carrying, pretty much the same thing. So that's always a good thing too. I got my gun bag that has all my essentials. It's got spare ear hearing protection, carries all my handgun magazines. If you're shooting 3-gun, you want to think about having shoulder or knee and elbow pads, because you will be down in the dirt. You will be down on the ground. And I guarantee you, when your knee slams down onto a rock somewhere when you're trying to kneel, it hurts like hell. So gloves is also a good one. I wear most of the time I wear one glove, and that's on my left hand because that's my support hand. I started wearing a glove on my left hand whenever I shoot, specifically because the first time I was shooting a shotgun, I couldn't reload my shotgun because it was too hot. So when I flipped it over in my hand, it was burning my hand. So you have to be careful about that kind of thing. So I've got tactical gloves. I've got knee pads and elbow pads. Let me think. I've got a rangefinder. Rangefinder is good if you're shooting distance. And if you couple that with what's the name of that? Let me see. There's an app that I use, and it's called Straylock Pro. It is a basically, I don't know if you can see it real well. Probably not real well because of the floodlight. But it is what you can actually do is you program your distance in yards. If you know wind speed, direction, slope, angle, and stuff like that, you put it in and you say what kind of rifle you're using, what kind of ammo, 55 grain 223, for example, if I'm using that. You put in your reticle for your scope, and then it'll tell you, and you can't really see it on there either, although that kind of looks like a scope. You can't see most of it. It'll show you the type of target. In this case, I've got the normal silhouette target that we use in 3-gun. And for the different distances, it tells me for 100 yards, I need to put the dot here on the target. For 300 yards, it goes here on the target. For 500 yards, it's right below the target. It gives you all that information. And it lets you zoom in, scope your zone, zoom your scope. So that's a real good thing to have. It helps you learn how to hit your target properly with your firearm based on all of those calculated results. I also carry an ammo box. One of the things that a lot of people don't do is they don't carry a lot of water. Okay. Here in Arizona, you carry a lot of water. So like I have a 2-gallon igloo cooler that I attach to my gun buggy. Plus we've got some insulated drinking cups that we take that goes into the top of the gun buggy so that we can actually stay hydrated, because here in the desert, your hydration goes out real quick. So you have to remember that. Another thing that you might want to carry with you is a first aid kit, trauma kit or whatever. I carry this almost pretty much everywhere I go these days. This is something that it's not specific to shooting. It's specific to safety. So it's basically a trauma pack. I've got a tourniquet here, scissors here, all of my stuff, tape and everything else is on the inside, bandages. And I always carry a CPR mask, first aid mask. So if I have to give somebody first aid or CPR, I can protect myself from any problems. Let's put it that way. So that's a good thing to have in your gun buggy. If you don't want to carry something like this, then carry some sort of basic first aid kit. I can't tell you how many times I got a scratch here, I got a thorn there. it's just really good to have, a pair of tweezers, some bandages, and this, that, and the other. That way, if you do get cut or hurt or whatnot, you can put it in there and you'll be done. So that's it for that. Gun buggy we went over. Always choose the right type of ammo for what you're doing. Normally, I use 150 grain on my 308 if I'm using it, 115 grain on my 9mm, and I usually use 12 gauge number 6 buckshot, bird shot, or double aught buck, or rifled slugs, depending on what the stage requires. Because some stages you will switch between slugs, buckshot, and birdshot all in one stage. So you have to keep that into account whenever you're shooting. As for other gear, chairs are always a good thing to have. We constantly carry a couple of like little 3-leg fold-out stools, because you can't really, when you got your gun belt on, it's really hard to sit in a chair because you hang up on everything. So we've got these little 3-leg stools that you just plop down and sit on, and that way your gun belt and everything is not even a problem. Shade. We have umbrellas that we take with us for shade, but we also have a 10-foot collapsible canopy that we have a second cart that I use for I always take a toolbox with me with all my tools in it. If you have a gun malfunction that you have to fix, if you don't have the tools, you're humped. Okay, that's the best way to all of a sudden not be able to compete real well in a match. Any extra ammo that I'm taking, any of that kind of stuff is all in the second buggy, just in case. But we do have a canopy that we put up, and everybody loves it, especially when we're in the back 40 at Rio Salado, where there's not really any shade. There's no trees or anything out there, so you're basically standing in the sun unless you have some sort of shade. So that's what we do, is we carry a canopy. You don't have to do that. That's just something we do because it's a pain in the butt setting it up and taking it down every stage. But having that shade keeps your gun buggy cool because you don't have the direct sunlight on your firearms. It's a good idea. Also, here in Arizona, another thing to have, I have a barrel cooler for my AR-15. Basically slides into the mag. It's battery operated. It slides into the mag hole, lines up with the barrel, and blows cold air or air from the outside down the barrel after you finish shooting, because your barrel is going to be really hot. So it helps, cool the barrel down, and that way you're not going to see skews on the next stage. So that's pretty much it about gear. The next thing to talk about is etiquette on the range. Okay, there's a lot of things that people don't think about when they're going to the range, and it's real important that you do consider this kind of stuff, because it could be a safety issue otherwise. The first one, of course, is always assume that your firearms are loaded. Now, Rio Salado is a cold range, which means that the only time you're allowed to load your firearm with ammo is, number one, if you're at the main range and you're going to be shooting, or number two, if you're in a competition, you may preload under the scrutiny of a range officer, and then load to shoot the match. But other than that, all of your firearms are always empty and they're always flagged or chamber open. And there goes the camera again. I just don't understand why it keeps doing that. It just doesn't like me today. It's kind of on, it's kind of off. Now it doesn't know what it's doing. I don't understand it. Anyways, I'll get it back on here in a second. Maybe. Okay, there we go. It should be coming back on here in a second. But anyway, so yeah, always think about that kind of stuff when you're going to the range, because it's really important to not break those rules. If you are armed and loaded when you get to the range, especially at Rio Salado, they recommend that you go to one of the range officers, and they will take you to a barrel that's got sand in the bottom of everything, that's specifically made so that you can empty your firearm at that barrel, so that there's not the chance of hitting somebody else, and then holstering your gun or taking it. That way it's not loaded. Most matches say to leave your everyday carry or any type of firearm that you're not going to be using in the match in your car. And that's just an easy way to do it. I always leave my everyday carry in the car when we go to the match in a lockbox. So that's always a smart thing to do also. Okay. But you always listen to the range officers, because they are the ones in charge of the range. If you don't listen to them, if you ignore them, that's a good way to get ejected from the range or a match or whatever. If you're constantly not listening when they're telling you, giving you instruction, then you're pretty much humped. So always pay attention to the range officers. They're not going to be messing with you and giving you a whole bunch of useless information. They're going to be there to protect your safety and the safety of everybody on the range. 180 rule. Okay. Always keep your firearms pointed downrange. Now, when you're at the main range, there's only one direction you keep them, and that's downrange. You don't sweep side to side because you're shooting at your bench at a straight target that's out straight away from you. So you always keep your firearms pointed downrange, period. Now, when you're in competitions, you're moving around a lot. So they have the 180. The 180 is basically like this, okay? So if you have your arms out like this, if you sweep your firearm past where your arms are right here, that breaks the 180, which is a disqualification event. Okay. Now, depending on what stage you're on, in which, like, for example, if you're in Pistol Bay 1, because of the way it's set up next to the main range, your 180 is basically here going down the range, but you're shooting to the right. So you're basically shooting at rows of targets on the right side of the bay, all of which are in front of that 180-degree mark. So if you sweep the crowd with your firearm, loaded or unloaded, it doesn't matter. They'll have you out of there faster than a, lightning bolt in the middle of a thunderstorm. You will be gone. So always keep your guns pointed down range. Do not play with your guns. Do not joke around with your guns. If you have issue with your guns and you need to work on it, do not do it on the bay. Go to the safe area where they have a table or someplace where you can actually work on your firearm without ammo. Make sure no ammo is with you is the safest way to go. You're not allowed to be playing around with ammo at the safe zone. The safe zone is for checking your firearms, working on your firearms. If they're broken, if you have something you have to fix on it, that's where you do that at, okay? So keep that in mind. Whenever you have your gun cart and stuff like that, always put your rifles on the rifle tables, your gun cart pointing towards the berm. It's all about being safe. One thing that a lot of people seem to forget or just don't care is that every match that I've gone to, the shooters help reset the stage. For example, you may have targets where you've got steel poppers, you got plate racks, you've got cardboard targets at different places. All of the competitors that are competing are the ones that actually reset the stage. So if you're not shooting, if you're not shooting on deck or in the hole, you're supposed to be helping out reset, unless you're running the clock or you're running the tablet, scorekeeping. Okay, so you go out there, you help tape up the cardboard targets, you help stand the poppers back up, you reset the plate rack. That is something that we're all supposed to do. There's a lot of people that won't do that. They'll just stand there and shoot the shit and let all the people who are being sportsmanlike go out there and do it, and they'll just sit over there in the shade and they'll just ignore it. Don't be like one of those guys, because those guys, I mean, most of us think they're just douchebags. So just don't do it, okay? Reset the stage. Help your range officers, help your staff, reset everything, and because that way you move fluently through the stage. You got 12 to 15 shooters in a squad. You got 11 stages. Well, you've got to kind of make time. And if you're not making that time because you got people that aren't resetting the stage, that's a problem. So always remember to do that. Always help reset the stage. Always listen to your range officers. When you do you're ready to start, you basically will either preload at a designated preload station, or if you're like me, I'm mag fed, so I don't have to preload. I just walk up and slap the magazine in, and I'm done. Preload is mostly for people that use shotguns, the tube loaders. You have to actually load the tubes, 8 rounds, 10 rounds, or whatever, one at a time or whatnot. So always, and once you preload your firearms and you put them in the barrels to prep for the stage, do not walk away from them. That's called abandonment. Okay. Now, if you have to do something, like at this last match, one of the guys that I shoot with, Lou, he's a real nice guy and everything. He had to go to the bathroom after he had loaded his shotgun. So I took his place in the square and guarded his shotgun so that it wasn't considered abandoned. It was under the guidance of the range of a range officer, because I am a range officer when I'm shooting. And it stayed safe. It did not move from the barrel. It always stayed in there. And then when he came back, we switched again, and then he was in complete control of his firearm. That's perfectly acceptable. So what they'll do is that whenever it's time, you'll go up there and they'll tell you to make ready. That means that you do a sight picture with your scope and or red dots. You check your firearm, make sure you pull your chamber flag out. You load it. Depending on the stage, you may have to start unloaded. You may have to start loaded and chambered, or loaded but not chambered. It depends on your stage, and it depends on the design of the stage. Once you're ready, and they'll tell you, because there's a start position. Most of the time it's butt on belt, or if you're starting with handgun, it'll be hands at your side, or it could be low ready, where your rifle or shotgun is in your shoulder facing down in a low, basically, I think it's called port arms. Then they'll say, are you ready? And you can nod, or you can say yes, or say nothing. If you're not saying anything, they're going to assume that as you are ready. Then they'll say stand by, and then a second or two later, they'll activate the clock, and you'll hear a beep. That's when it's your signal to start the stage. You'll go through the stage, you shoot your targets, make sure you dump your guns in the right barrels, okay? Make sure they stay in the dump barrels. I've seen people disqualified because they came running by and they threw their rifle in, it hit the bottom and bounced right out onto the ground, and they were disqualified for that. Because safe or not, you lost control of your firearm, okay? So always make sure that when your firearm is going into a barrel or a gun collector or whatever it's called, that you have your safety on if you have one, okay? My handgun doesn't have a safety, but it's got a trigger safety. It's basically a split trigger like the Glock. Does the same thing. So it goes into the bin. I don't have to worry about a safety. But if you do have a safety on your firearm and you don't put that safety, engage that safety when you dump it, you get disqualified at least from that stage for dumping an armed firearm. Shotgun is the same way. Always put your safety on when you drop it in. Your rifle, put your safety on when you drop it in. If your shotgun is on empty and the bolts lock back, or your rifle is empty and your bolts lock back, you don't have to have the safety on, because it's obviously the bolt's open. There's no rounds. You're good. If not, put the safety on. I've seen people disqualified for that. And then at the end of the stage, your range officer will say, if you are finished, unload and show clear. Basically, what you do is you drop your magazine out, or you just discharge all the ammo. If you're using a shotgun that's a tubular, you have to actually empty all your rounds so that your shotgun is completely empty. Then they'll tell you to bolt forward, hammer down, which means you pull the trigger on an empty firearm so that it clicks forward, and that way it's safe. Then you put in your chamber flag, you put your safety on, muzzle up, you're good. They call the range clear. And it's the same for a rifle. Now, if it's a pistol, then you clear the pistol, you take it, and then after it's empty and they verify, they'll holster it. Then they give you the range is clear. Then everybody can go in and start setting up the targets. And that's pretty much the way it works in a match. Most people that are shooting these days are experienced competitors, so they've been doing it for a long time. They're also, for the most part, relatively helpful to new shooters. And that's one of the reason why I try to get more people to be involved, and I like more people to come and compete, is because it's nice to get new shooters out there. It gives you more competition because you have more people, and it gets more people into the actual competitive nature of competitive shooting. It's gotten, competitive shooting has been on the rise for a long time, and it's a lot of fun. It can be dangerous, but for the most part, it's not. There hasn't really, the only accidents I can think of that I've ever seen out there is occasionally somebody will cut their hand, or, get nicked by a bolt closing or something like that. Or we had one guy, I think, that had a little bit of heat stroke one day, not heat stroke, but heat exhaustion. So they sent him home. We did have one lady, I think, up at Ben Avery that got bit by a Mojave rattlesnake. That was bad. So you also, whenever you're resetting stages and stuff like that, and you're working around, you're in the desert, pay attention to your surroundings, because this snake was right underneath the support mechanism for the target. So how the snake wasn't seen or heard, because rattlesnakes usually give you a warning before they bite. So it's always good to be safe and to prepare for that kind of stuff. And I think the biggest and most important thing is have fun. Okay. There's a lot of people that I shoot with that are diehard in the wool. Oh my God, I have to win this match type attitude. Then you got people like me that are just there because it's fun. We're enjoying ourselves, practicing. You're getting better with your firearms. You know, it's the mentality of some people, and you'll see it when you're out there for a period of time. Depends on what their goal is, what their motivation is. My motivation is I wanted to learn how to be better with my firearms. I wanted to get exercise, and I wanted to learn how to change targets, how to reload on the run, how to do all of this kind of stuff that you would expect in some sort of training. And it's delivered. I mean, I've had a really good time over the past 3 years competing, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, depending on ammo, of course, because that tends to get a little bit, scary when you can't even get ammo to be able to shoot your match. So those are the things that, etiquette-wise, be prepared when you're on the range. Most of the time, depending on where you're shooting and what match it is, for example, Rio Salado, the multi-gun, the black rifle, and the PCC, they have new shooters, 30-minute safety training course before the match starts, where they give you the rules. They talk about the different commands that you're going to hear, the different match rules that you're going to have to adhere to, that kind of thing. It's not like we just let people go out there blind and have no idea what the hell they're doing. You also can always ask experienced shooters for help. None of us has a problem with helping people. We're all pretty much good about being nice to new shooters. And when people have questions, there was a guy that was new shooting. He said it was his second and a half match because he got disqualified on one of the matches. So he was asking me questions about my shotgun, about how to do 3-gun versus 2-gun, because he was just shooting 2-gun. So there's a lot of things that you can do to help as an experienced shooter to bring more people in the fold and make them feel comfortable. If you're going to be an asshole to them, then people are not going to want to shoot. They're saying, well, I went there, but these asshole guys were all mad because I was going slower than I should. Well, you're going to run into people like that. When my son came out, him and his girlfriend shot with me. They'd never been in a match before, but we had a mentor on the squad, and he walked them through the entire match. He was very patient with them. They were learning. They had never done this before. It was a good time. We had a blast. Sure, it took us a little longer. We were a little slower than we should have been, but now we have 2 new people that are really interested in competitive shooting. So that's a good thing. All right, well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. It's 58:33 from the start. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope it's been informational for you. I hope that if you're interested in competing, to reach out. If you have any questions, I'm more than able to answer questions. Not a problem. You can message me on Facebook, on my Scooters Brass page, message me on YouTube, on Twitch, whichever one. You can email me, scootersbrass@gmail.com, if you have any questions, comments. If you want to be on the show, if you want to talk about something specific on the show, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to put it on the show, put you on the show. I just ask that you be respectful. I try not to be too political on the show, because my politics of shooting is that it's an American issue, not a right or a left issue. So I try to keep that balanced. So just keep that in mind. And thanks for listening in today. I hope you guys have a great week. We are coming up on Labor Day weekend in 2 weeks. But probably not going to be doing a show Labor Day weekend, because hopefully we're going to be, out and about doing a lot of fun things. So keep that in mind over the next couple of weeks, and be safe out there, folks. Can't stress that enough. Training, safety, those are the important parts. Have a good night. Have a good day. And have a good week.